The day my son became a doctor was the day I discovered my wife's 20-year betrayal. What was supposed to be the proudest moment of my life turned into the unraveling of everything I thought I knew. Hey everyone, and thanks for stopping by Real Cheating Story. This one begins on a sunny June afternoon, when I watched my son, Jacob Walker, step across the stage at Columbia Medical School's graduation. I stood there in my dark tailored suit, posture straight, expression composed, just like I'd trained myself to be over the years running a cybersecurity company from the ground up. I was 45 and keeping control was second nature by then. Even so, my heart swelled as Jacob took that diploma in his hands. My eyes, usually cool and focused, gave me away just a little. There was no hiding the pride in them. Dr. Jacob Elijah Walker, the dean announced, his voice rolling across the auditorium like a wave. I saw my wife, Amanda, from where I stood. She raised her hand, nails perfectly polished, to snap a picture with her phone. After 2 decades together, Amanda still drew glances from every direction. Her crimson dress hugged her frame just right, and her golden hair was swept back like she'd stepped out of a magazine. When our eyes met, she gave me a soft smile, brushing away a tear with her fingertip. Sitting close to the stage, my mother, Margaret, sat straight-backed with both hands clinging tightly to her small leather purse. Something about her seemed off. Lately, she'd been acting a little strange, but I chalked it up to the stress of the day. Now, though, I noticed something new. Every time Amanda shifted or leaned forward, my mother subtly flinched like she didn't want to be near her. As Jacob made his way back to his seat, my mind drifted to those weekly poker nights Amanda started hosting not long after our wedding. She'd said it was a way to keep the old gang close, my groomsmen especially. There was Adam Pierce, the smooth-talking attorney who always brought imported cigars. Then Jamal, who'd made a name for himself in luxury real estate. He never passed up a chance to complain about losing money. And then there was Mike North, once a college quarterback, now a high school coach. Somehow, Mike always walked away with the biggest stack like he could read your mind. "Your boy really made you proud today, Jack," Adam said, leaning forward from the row behind mine. His voice was low, casual. "We should do something big tonight." Without looking back, I gave a quiet nod. "We've got the party at the house. That'll be enough." Adam didn't drop it. "Come on, man," he murmured, nudging gently. "A special day like this calls for a celebration," Jamal said with a sly grin. "Amanda told us we could take over the game room tonight," Mike added, his chuckle laced with a tone that suggested they had plans beyond just poker. "I've got an early start tomorrow," I replied, my voice flat, giving no room for negotiation. "But you guys go ahead and enjoy yourselves." Mike laughed under his breath. "Some things never change." Just then Amanda turned and threw the guys a playful wink, which didn't go unnoticed. I caught my mother stiffen even more, her knuckles whitening around that purse of hers. After the ceremony, a small wave of faculty and fellow parents gathered around me, many eager to chat about potential investments in cybersecurity. I handled each conversation with the ease of someone who'd been playing the game for years. Measured, direct, always staying one step ahead. I was mid-sentence in a back and forth about blockchain platforms when I heard Jacob's voice call out, "Dad." At 26, Jacob had just about caught up to me in height. He had my dark hair, and that same determined set to his jaw I used to see in the mirror at his age. I slipped away from the conversation and pulled him into a firm hug. "Congratulations, Dr. Walker," I said, proud as I've ever been. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you and Mom." Amanda joined us, sliding her arm through mine like we were still just newlyweds. "We always knew you had it in you," she said, gently straightening his graduation cap with a tender smile. "With your father's focus and my flair, greatness was inevitable." Before Jacob could respond, Adam appeared with Mike and Les right behind him. "Speaking of greatness," Adam said, flashing a grin and holding out a sleek, black envelope that looked like it cost more than some people's phones. "We got you something, kid." Jacob opened it and gave a soft whistle. "Celtic season tickets? No way. This is amazing. Thanks, Uncle Adam. Uncle Mike. Uncle Les." "You earned it," Mike said, giving his shoulder a solid pat. "We've watched you become a remarkable young man," Les added, giving him a small nod. "Feels like just yesterday we were shooting baskets in your backyard. Now you're off to Mass General to start your residency. Time really flies." Out of nowhere, my mother, Margaret, stepped in abruptly, slipping between Les and Jacob like she was trying to shield him. "We should probably head back to the house," she said, her voice clipped and firm. "The caterers will be waiting." I watched how she positioned herself, almost like she was trying to physically block Jacob from the guys. It wasn't subtle. She stood squarely between him and the group like a quiet wall. Her odd behavior had been building for weeks, but now it was getting harder and harder to brush aside. Still, this wasn't the time to question it. Not here, not today. Mom's right, I said, keeping my voice smooth and calm. We've got about an hour before guests start arriving. As everyone headed off toward the parking lot, I stayed back just a moment longer, letting my eyes scan over the little things, the kind of details most people wouldn't notice but I always did. Adam reached out to help Amanda into our SUV, his hand lingering a beat too long at the small of her back. It looked casual, but I'd been around long enough to catch the difference between kindness and familiarity. This leaned into the second. Mike's phone kept buzzing in his pocket, but he ignored it, sticking close to the others like he didn't want to miss anything. Unless? He hung around longer than necessary, giving lingering hugs to a few of the younger female grads. Too long. A little too friendly. The drive home was mostly silent. Jacob took off with a group of his friends, and despite Amanda offering her a ride, my mother insisted on driving herself back. Said she preferred it. That's how she put it, preferred it. No room for argument. I used the quiet to start sorting through the chaos of the upcoming week in my head, back-to-back board meetings, high-stakes security contracts, a couple of international calls that couldn't be pushed. My mind was racing, but outwardly I stayed composed. You're awfully quiet, Amanda said suddenly, her hand resting lightly on my thigh as I steered us down the road. Just thinking, I said. It's strange, isn't it? Feels like Jacob was just learning how to ride a bike. Now he's a doctor. Her hand pulled back almost immediately. Always thinking about work, she said with a sigh, not bothering to hide her disappointment. I've got a lot on my plate, I replied, keeping my eyes on the road. She didn't respond right away, just stared out the window. Do me a favor and at least try to enjoy the party, she finally said. The boys planned something special for him. My jaw tensed when she said it. The boys. That's what she always called them, like they were some sacred little group only she could truly understand. I'm sure they did, I said evenly. They've always played a big role in our lives. She turned her head to the side, eyes still on the passing trees and houses. But not before I caught something, a brief flicker of something uneasy in her expression. Their family, she said softly, almost to herself. They've always been around, I started to say, but before I could finish, Adam's sleek black car pulled up, engine humming. Right behind him came Mike in his glossy Range Rover, followed by Les in his older, reliable sedan. All three of them stepped out laughing, Les already yanking at his tie like he couldn't wait to loosen up. Jack. Adam called, grinning as he made his way over. Need a hand getting the bar set up? The staff's got it handled, I said, keeping my tone steady and clear. But I'm sure Amanda could use a hand in the game room, she always values your expertise. The guys exchanged a quick glance between them before Adam gave a wide, knowing smile. Always happy to help the lady of the house, he said with a chuckle. As they disappeared into the house, Margaret finally pulled into the driveway, her car inching forward like she'd driven every block with heavy thoughts weighing her down. Inside me, a quiet storm had started to brew. My world, so carefully built, so precisely maintained, felt like it had a hairline fracture. And I knew myself well enough to know, if there was a crack, I'd find it. And if someone had crossed me, if anyone had dared betray me, they'd soon understand why competitors feared me more than any courtroom ever could. Meanwhile, just a few streets away, my sister Cecilia sat in her parked car, watching the party unfold from a distance. Guests were arriving in waves, luxury cars packing the driveway and lining the curbs. The celebration was in full swing. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, lit up with message after message from family asking where she was. But Cecilia didn't move. She sat still, her face pale, eyes locked on the house she'd practically grown up in. She's been collecting secrets for years, she said softly, speaking into her phone. Amanda's got us all in a chokehold. There was a silence on the other end of the call before Margaret's voice came through again. Steadier this time. No one corners a walker. Your brother built an empire by protecting secrets. If anyone can handle the truth, it's Jack. But it's going to break him. It's already started, Cecilia whispered. 20 years of marriage. His closest friends since college. This is already ripping everything apart. And yet here you are, Margaret replied firmly, sitting in your car, talking to me instead of standing by your nephew's side, instead of walking into that house and celebrating. Cecilia felt her throat tighten as tears welled at the corners of her eyes. Back at the house, I stepped out onto the porch, eyes scanning the road. I lifted my phone and dialed. Cecilia, I said, voice low but clear. Where are you? She didn't speak for a second. And then softly, Jack, please? I cut her off, not harshly but with finality. Something's wrong. I feel it. It's Amanda, isn't it? And them. My friends. Her silence was enough. I didn't need her to say a word more. I pushed the door open and spoke calmly but firmly. Get out of the car, Cecilia. We're not putting this off anymore. Whatever this is, we deal with it now. I can't, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Amanda, she's got things, on me, on all of us. A heavy silence settled between us. Then I said it aloud, the weight of the truth sinking in. My wife is blackmailing you. Cecilia didn't argue. She didn't have to. Inside me something shifted. I had spent decades safeguarding the most guarded data in the world, building a reputation that sent shivers down the backs of tech giants and foreign competitors alike. I'd weathered digital wars and taken on shadowy networks without blinking. But this betrayal, so personal, so close, was something else entirely. Amanda and her little circle had no idea what they'd awakened. They thought they understood secrets. But they were playing in the dark with someone who'd built a career surviving in it. Back at the estate, the party was still in full swing. Laughter, clinking glasses, the buzz of conversation, all filling the halls of my home. But my mind wasn't on the guests. I stood in my home office, surrounded by the soft glow of security monitors, watching every angle of the celebration. Behind me, my mother paced, her heels making sharp clicks against the floor. I caught her last month, she said suddenly, anger tightly controlled in her voice. I came by to drop off those documents for you and, she stopped herself, fists clenched. Just then, Les walked past the office door, hesitated for a split second, and then slowly closed it behind him. That brief hesitation said more than words ever could. Margaret turned to me, her expression sharp, her anger no longer restrained. How can you even bear to look at them, knowing what they've done? I turned from the screens and looked at her directly. My voice was flat, stripped of all emotion. Because, Mom, in my business the first rule is simple. Never let your target know they're being watched. The second they feel safe, that's when they make mistakes. I turned back to my desk and began tapping into our internal archive systems, pulling from deeply buried surveillance protocols we used in my company's most sensitive operations. They think they're untouchable right now, I continued. That arrogance will be their downfall. I pulled up another folder, one buried under layers of encryption. Did you know Mike's been logging into our guest Wi-Fi every Thursday night? Same pattern for 20 years. And every single time, right after those so-called poker games, he uploads files to a private encrypted cloud. Margaret's face paled with a flash of fury. They've been storing evidence, proof of their betrayal, right here in your own house. My eyes didn't waver from the screen. Using the same systems I designed. The infrastructure I built with my own hands. After the door clicked shut, I stood still for a moment, letting the weight of it all settle. Then I moved back to my desk, reached beneath the polished wood surface, and pressed a small recessed button only I knew about. Instantly, hidden panels along the wall shifted open with a low mechanical hum, revealing the heartbeat of my private network. Rows of encrypted servers and data nodes I'd had installed years ago for contingencies just like this. Let's see what kind of little empire you've been running behind my back, Amanda, I muttered under my breath. With a few commands, I initiated a deep crawl, pulling archived camera feeds, phone logs, stored messages, and decades of financial records. 20 years of digital footprints left behind by people so sure of themselves they never even thought to look over their shoulders. At my company's operations hub across the city, Charles, my top analyst and one of the few people I trusted, sat up straight as the system pinged online. He had worked under me for nearly 15 years and had never seen me reach out after hours, let alone with this kind of urgency. When I connected to his secure terminal, I didn't waste words. Show me everything, I ordered. My voice had the edge I reserved for war rooms and hostile takeovers. Without missing a beat, Charles replied, I've already begun scanning the data since your call. The trail is massive. He pulled up a timeline on the largest screen. Their activity started the day after your wedding. Every Thursday night. Without exception. I leaned in closer, watching as decades of upload and download logs painted a grim story. There it was, undeniable patterns buried in plain sight. Charles brought up a side folder and clicked into a more personal series of files. Les has been using his access to get close to vulnerable students. Most of them young women. Some undocumented. Some with no family support. My heart clenched, but I kept my voice cold. Show me. He opened another set of folders, Screens filled with surveillance stills, email threads, fragments of text messages that painted an ugly picture. Les had been smart, careful, methodical, but not careful enough. We've confirmed at least 12 victims in the last 5 years, Charles said quietly. There's likely more. From earlier, maybe even before you met Amanda. I tightened my grip on the desk's edge until my knuckles turned white. And Amanda? Charles hesitated only a second before nodding grimly. She's the one pulling the strings. She built the web around all of them. She's the architect. The room went still except for the hum of the servers and the rhythmic tapping of Charles's keyboard. He dove deeper, into long-forgotten backups, encrypted clouds and fragments recovered from discarded drives. The deeper he went, the more sinister the story became. Sir, Charles said finally, his voice tight with tension. There's something else. He brought up a fresh batch of files, this time financial records. And as they loaded across the screen, my stomach dropped. She's been moving money, Charles said, his voice grim as the financial data continued to scroll across the screen. It started small, tiny transfers here and there, but they've grown. Larger amounts. Offshore accounts. She's cashing out of your shared investments, liquidating assets slowly. Amanda's building herself an escape route. I stared at the figures. Patterns. Dates. Accounts linked to shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Singapore, Dubai. I didn't say a word, but something inside me turned to stone. Later that night, I found myself in a downtown law office, across from a man I'd known for years, Miles Parker. He wasn't just any lawyer. He was a storm-weathered federal investigator turned private litigator who dealt in high-stakes whistleblower cases and corporate takedowns. The kind of man who could crack the system and still walk away spotless. He flipped through the dense files I'd handed him, each page heavier than the last. Walk me through this again, he said, eyeing me over the rim of his glasses. You're saying your wife, and 3 highly regarded men in your circle, have been doing all of this, inside your home? For 20 years. Not just doing it, I replied, my voice low but precise like a scalpel. They were documenting it. Organizing it. Using my own surveillance network to build their archive, right under my roof. Miles paused and lifted a hand. And this evidence, you collected it how? Legally, I said. Through my company's internal monitoring systems, through servers I own, networks I built. The digital signatures are clean. They won't be able to challenge it in court. No loopholes. You've got the power to bury this, Miles said, leaning back. Private settlements. Lawsuits. Make it all vanish. So why bring it to me? Because it needs to be exposed, I said, my eyes locking with his. It needs to be public. Legal. Unquestionable. Their colleagues, their families, every person who ever trusted them, they deserve to know the truth. Miles let out a long breath. That's a brutal way to bring justice. They desecrated my home, I said, and for the first time my voice faltered, just a crack but enough to feel it. They used my hospitality. They twisted my trust. Manipulated Amanda. And they recorded it all, like it was some game. A collection of trophies. I leaned forward, hands flat on the table. Amanda didn't just go along with it. She engineered it. She blackmailed others, strategized their moves, turned my own tools into weapons. Her betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was systematic. Calculated. Miles sat silently, studying me. This was who I had become now. A man who once protected the secrets of nations, now digging through the digital wreckage left by those closest to him. And using the same ruthless precision to burn down the illusion they built. There's a dark poetry to it, Miles said softly. You made your fortune keeping secrets safe. Now you're unraveling your own world, piece by piece. I want it all documented, I told him. Every message. Every dollar moved. Every victim. I want the timeline, the chain of evidence, every keystroke, every timestamp. Miles nodded slowly. Then we'd better get started. I'll need access to your full surveillance logs. I'll send Charles the request. He's already pulling the mansion's tactical overview, I said. This has to be flawless. I've run the diagnostics 3 times, Charles said, eyes locked on the screen as he brought up the results. Everything checks out. No interference. Compression's tight, encryption holds, and delivery channels confirmed. The door opened behind us. Cecilia stepped into the room, cradling a large, white binder, the kind used for weddings, stuffed with pages and tabs. She looked exhausted but resolute. Amanda's still completely wrapped up in party mode, she said, placing the binder down with a quiet thump. She thinks I'm helping her coordinate Matthew's big celebration, picking out floral themes and napkin styles. She doesn't suspect a thing. You don't have to keep pretending, I said, glancing up at her. I know, Cecilia replied. But it buys us time. Charles turned to me. Jammers are synced. The moment you give the signal, their devices are cut off. No texts. No calls. No warnings. I nodded. Set the systems to lock them in place. Once the clock starts, no one leaves and no one wipes anything. No one disappears, Charles echoed. Cecilia looked up from one of the layouts she'd been marking with notes. What about Amanda? She asked, hesitating. She's clever. She can spin anything into sympathy. You know how she is. People love her. Not this time, I said, my voice low and unwavering. Every lie she's whispered, every word she's twisted to her favor, every staged emotion, it's all archived. Not just data. Audio. Visual. Context. This time she doesn't get to control the narrative. Charles tapped his final diagnostic screen. Backup servers are synced and secure. Full clones of every file stored in triplicate. If they try to destroy anything, we can restore it with a timestamp. I stood still, surrounded by monitors glowing with live feeds from every angle of the house. On one screen, Amanda was directing a florist, waving her hands as she adjusted a centerpiece. Another showed Adam shaking hands with a pair of clients near the bar. Mike was outside tossing a ball to one of his kids, grinning like a proud father. Les was in the den giving some sort of pep talk to his staff over speakerphone. They looked like model citizens, charming, successful, beloved. But I knew the truth now. Their polished personas were about to collapse, and I would be the one to expose them. After a career spent safeguarding the secrets of others, it was poetic that my most meaningful work would be tearing down the lies that had poisoned my own life. I heard the shift in the hallway before I saw her. Amanda entered the room, gliding between the men like she owned the moment. She smiled brightly and looked straight at me. Darling, she said, her voice sugar-sweet. Shouldn't you be getting ready for your toast? Everyone's waiting. Of course, I replied smoothly. I've actually put something together. Something special. Amanda's grip around her champagne glass tightened, her knuckles whitening. Oh, she said carefully. Something special? I nodded. A multimedia presentation, I said with a calm smile. Something that reflects on the last 2 decades. A look back at the past. Her eyes sharpened ever so slightly. The past, she echoed, each syllable slow and measured. Every moment, I said, stepping to the front of the room. Every lie. Every betrayal. It's all accounted for. Each of your phones will receive a custom archive in 30 seconds. Amanda's hand trembled slightly as she clutched her glass tighter. You can't do this, she whispered, her voice low and desperate. Please, Jack, think about Jacob. Think about our reputation. His future. I am thinking about him, I replied, steady and cold. He deserves the truth. About you. About the people who claim to care for him. I turned to the microphone, took a breath, and watched as the room slowly hushed. Eyes turned toward me, expressions confused, some still smiling, unaware of what was coming. But the ones who mattered, Amanda, Adam, Mike, Les, they weren't smiling anymore. Their faces had gone still, pale. They knew. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice carrying calmly through the sound system, thank you for being here today to celebrate my son's achievements. But before we raise another glass, there's something I need to share. Around the room, phones began to buzz. One by one, guests looked down, opened messages, and started reading, watching videos, listening to audio recordings. For a moment it was just silence and gasps. Then came the voices. You said those private sessions were for scholarship interviews. One woman cried out, clutching her daughter close. Les made another break for the exit, but Detective Donovan and his team, already positioned, moved quickly. Leslie North, the detective's voice rang out. You are under arrest for multiple counts of misconduct, abuse of authority, and obstruction. Panic swept through the room. Chairs scraped back. Guests stood. Phones lit up with damning evidence. And still I kept speaking, calm, measured, undeniable. There will be no settlements, I said. No hush money. No hidden deals behind closed doors. Everything you see on those files is real. Archived. Verified. Preserved. Amanda turned to me, her voice barely audible. The prenup, she started, specifically included provisions for ongoing surveillance and digital monitoring of all household systems, I said, cutting her off. Signed. Notarized. You really should have read the fine print. Charles made sure of it, I added. At that moment, Jacob pushed through the crowd, his face ashen, his eyes wide. Mom? he said, voice cracking. How could you? Amanda turned to him, her expression breaking. Jacob, honey, I can explain. He pulled back, pain clear on his face. Explain what? That you used our home to blackmail people? That you let them hurt others and covered it up? His voice trembled but didn't falter. You weren't protecting anyone. You were building a prison. And I lived in it. I stepped forward, my voice steady. Everything is here. Every file. Every word. There will be no silence. As the officers placed Amanda, Adam, Mike, and Les in cuffs and led them away, I turned toward Jacob. His face was stricken. His world turned inside out, but there was something else there too. A kind of quiet resolve. The kind I'd seen in myself once. He understood. The truth, as painful as it was, had finally set him free. 1 year later. The courtroom was still. Amanda sat across from me, her expression hollow as her appeal hearing neared its end. The judge looked over the closing arguments, eyes tired but focused. Whatever verdict came next, it didn't matter like it used to. The house was quiet now. The secrets had been stripped away. And for the first time in decades, I could finally breathe. Caleb sat in the back of the courtroom, posture straight, expression unreadable. The verdict had been delivered and justice, long overdue, was finally served. Les would spend the rest of his life behind bars, his name permanently linked to the lives he had damaged. And Amanda, so poised, so calculating, received the harshest sentence of them all. Her attempts to portray herself as just another pawn fell apart against the mountain of evidence Caleb had brought forward. The court didn't buy her tears. Not this time. Outside the courthouse, Detective Miles Donovan stood beside Caleb's car, hands in his pockets, watching the city hum around them. Heard the appeal got denied, he said quietly. 20 years minimum, Caleb replied, adjusting his tie. Clean. Solid. Deserved. Miles gave a small nod. You did what most people wouldn't dare. Caleb didn't respond. There was no need to. No speeches, no satisfaction. Just truth. Months later. At a small, sunlit chapel nestled on the edge of Boston Harbor, Jacob exchanged vows with the woman he loved. Caleb stood at the edge of the aisle, allowing himself a moment to simply breathe. The road here had been brutal. The implosion of his marriage had torn through every part of his life, leaving nothing untouched. But in its wake, something better had emerged, something real. A future not built on illusion but on truth. Cecilia had reclaimed her voice and her dignity. Margaret no longer woke up in fear of shadows she couldn't name. And Jacob, he was finally free to build a life that wasn't tangled in deceit. The wedding reception was simple. There were no elaborate displays, no phony speeches. Just heartfelt laughter, clinking glasses, and the quiet comfort of family that had weathered the storm. Meanwhile, in her quiet cell, Amanda Bennett marked her second decade behind bars. The perfect life she once obsessed over was long gone. In its place was something colder, something real. Reflection stripped of vanity. And Caleb, the man she thought she'd outsmarted, had rebuilt everything she tried to destroy. But cleaner, stronger. Freed from the rot that once sat behind Sunday brunches and dinner parties. Some truths don't require explanation. Some victories don't need applause. And some men, when betrayed, don't just seek revenge. They deliver justice. Fully. 10 years later, somewhere in Nevada, Adam lost everything in the divorce. Last anyone heard, he was working part-time at a car wash, living week to week in a roadside motel. His kids wrote a memoir called The Mask He Wore, chronicling their life with a father who lived a double life. Streaming networks fought over the rights. Amanda's hands trembled as she read the headlines. In the corner of the prison library, she looked up at Cecilia, who had just set down the latest tech magazine. And Caleb? Amanda asked, voice barely audible. Cecilia's gaze sharpened. His company has tripled in size, she said. The scandal made him a legend. Now everyone wants cybersecurity from the man who caught his own wife. In cybersecurity circles, they call him the digital executioner. It started as a nickname passed around in quiet admiration, among CEOs, federal agents, and IT professionals. But it stuck. Caleb Walker wasn't just the man who caught a scandal. He was the man who dismantled a network of betrayal that had lived right under his own roof. Behind that title, though, was something far more personal. For the victims of Les's manipulation, for the families torn by Patrick and Mike's deceit, and for everyone Amanda once held hostage through blackmail, Caleb became something more than a name. He was justice with a memory. Cecilia said nothing as she placed the final envelope in Amanda's hands. Inside were the documents that sealed her fate, the files, the timestamps, the truth, the evidence she thought she'd erased. Without a word, Cecilia turned and walked out, leaving Amanda alone with the silence. Alone with memories she could never undo. Back in her cell, Amanda stared at the envelope like it was a ghost. For 10 years she had dreamed of the life she lost. The mansion, the lavish parties, the influence. She had believed she would never fall. She had believed Caleb would never see her coming. But he had. 10 years later. The Walker home was warm and full of life. The smell of dinner drifted through the air as children raced through the halls, their voices high and excited. On the kitchen island sat a small box wrapped in silver paper. Inside, early security patents once owned by Charles, gifted now to the next generation. "Dad, we're all waiting at the house," Jacob said over the phone. "Sabrina's made dinner and the kids are bouncing off the walls. They can't wait to show you their science projects." Caleb smiled, a real one. One of those rare, quiet smiles he only ever gave to family. Watching his son find peace and build a life with Sabrina had been Caleb's quietest victory. The kind that didn't make headlines but healed something deeper. Something Amanda had tried to destroy but never could. "They're getting Charles's old patent bundles for Christmas," Caleb said, standing and grabbing his coat. It's never too early to learn about digital forensics. Justice had been served. And not in whispers or settlements. It had been public, complete, and final. Back in her cell, Amanda sat alone, the envelope still unopened. Her sentence had 10 years left, but the weight of what she had done would stretch beyond that. Past parole, past prison. She had played a dangerous game, always convinced she was a step ahead, especially of Caleb. But she forgot who he was. She forgot that the man she underestimated had built his life protecting secrets. And when those secrets turned on him, he didn't just survive. He exposed them.